Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Instant Pictures podcast. I'm your host, Max Colville. This is episode 132, and we will be talking about the filmography of Sam Raimi, the director of such films as Evil Dead, the original Spider-Man trilogy, and the new Doctor Strange in the, I think it's what was it, the Mountain of Madness or something like that?
Multiverse of Madness.
Multiverse of Madness, right. And if you heard, we have a special guest today. John could not make it, but I am joined by our guest. I believe it's Linda Codega.
That's correct. Codega, like bodega, but with the C, just like one letter down.
Wonderful, Linda. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and where they can find your work?
Yeah, so I am currently a pop culture journalist for IO9, which means that I just get to sit around all day, write about nerd shit. I mostly cover tabletop role-playing games, film, and television, all with like a science fiction speculative lens. And most of my work is on IO9 right now. I've also been published other places, but I'm not doing that anymore. And I write fiction in my spare time whenever I have it.
Oh, that's cool. Do you write like a particular genre, like science fiction, fantasy, or?
Oh, yeah. Fantasy is really where I'm at right now. My book is actually like on submission right now, so we're like,
wonderful.
Yeah. So like, fingers crossed something moves there. But yeah, in general, the best way to find me is on Twitter. I'm at Linda Codega.
All right, cool. And so you do a lot of like nerd stuff. Like what do you cover a lot of film generally, or just have a large interest in film and television?
So a lot of the film that I cover, it tends to be the kind of like weird indie stuff. Like the biggest example right now is Everything Everywhere All at Once. I actually have written 4 articles for that film. Yeah. So anything that's like a little bit off the wall is really what I enjoy doing. And I will write about a Marvel if I must. But in general, I like kind of the funky little films. A really cool article that I did recently was about how Free Guy is a Marxist text.
Oh. Oh, that's fun. Is that also at IO9 or is
it is at IO9?
All right, good. So if people want to check that out, that's where to go. So we typically, I told Linda before we started the show that we normally do some brief news, and this week we decided, instead of doing like, for the past 2-3 years, we've kind of put on hold, Linda, where John and I used to do a big box office game where we pretend like we tried to predict what movies would make the most money, and then we draft them, and then in the course of drafting them, we would talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
We've kind of stopped doing that during the pandemic because we didn't know whether or not the movies would actually come out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or like how they'd even measure the box office when they were like direct to video.
Oh God.
I mean, this year is more regular, but we're not gonna really do that again this year. Mostly because I lose most of the time.
Bummer.
Yeah, big bummer. But I wanted to talk about some quick summer movies that I'm kind of anticipating, and I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe some of the movies that you're anticipating. You said that you'd like some your interests lie in smaller films, so maybe you'll add some films that I won't target with the big blockbuster recommendations.
Gosh, I wish I could say that were true, but it's probably not, because the stuff I'm excited for is like Bullet Train.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That's the Brad Pitt movie.
Yeah, Brad Pitt, and gosh, I cannot recall for the life of me who's directing it, but it's the same guy who directed John Wick.
Yeah, and Deadpool too. I think it's like David Leitch or something like that.
Yes, exactly, David Leitch. So it's going to be like just bonkers. Really excited for that one. I love Brad Pitt unhinged, frankly. And of course, Nope, Jordan Peele's film.
Yeah.
Excited about that one.
Which we've seen the trailer, and it's funny. I've been to the movies like a few times in the last week for the first time in a long time. I went to the movies twice in a week. And both times the Nope trailer played, and I just like closed my eyes because I've like seen it enough times now. I'm like, I don't want these like images ingrained in my memory. So like,
you know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, like by the time I see it, like it's old hat, like the
Mhm.
images. So I'm just like, no, I've seen it enough times. I know what Nope is. I want to see it.
Like,
So
I get it, I understand.
yeah, I'm
Um,
sure there'll be another trailer before it comes out. But yeah, I'm sold. I don't need anything else.
totally. There I mean, there's a couple so there are a couple films coming out in August that I'm kind of pumped for. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yeah, that one played at South by Southwest.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that. Like, Lee Pace, I love that man. He's just a lotta boy, and I'm really excited to see that the old no, the Borat 2 woman, she's in it. Like, that
Yes.
she's gonna be great. And I'm also speaking of Sam Raimi films, uh, Jamie Foxx in Day Shift.
Oh, I don't know Bay Shift.
Oh my gosh, so Day Shift is gonna be a Netflix film that's
Oh, right.
basically, kind of it's a vampire hunting film where Jamie Foxx plays, like, this blue collar, uh, worker of some kind. I don't know if he's, like, a mechanic or, like, a pool cleaner or, like, a pool cleaner sounds right. Pool cleaner. Yeah, he's a pool cleaner and he fights vampires in his spare time. It's gonna be like very silly and gonna be very much like Raimi-esque, I think, in a very fun way.
Yeah, I could see that. For me, more traditional like big movies that I want to see. I'm really excited to see Top Gun Maverick. Um, I'm supposed to see it in like a week or so, so
Amazing.
I'm really excited for that. I know it's funny when I talked to John on the show, and he did a whole filmography of Tony Scott, maybe last year or the year before, and I believe he's not the biggest fan of Top Gun. Maybe he's not into just the kitsch of it. Like it's just like it's
The
so
propaganda of it
yeah,
all.
yeah. I mean, like sometimes it's supposed to be taken seriously, and then other times it's just like, yeah, this shouldn't be taken seriously at all.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the new film, and certainly it feels to me like that's the last big holdover from the pandemic. Like that one was like delayed like 2 years, and it's finally coming out, and so maybe most of those films that were waylaid will finally have seen the day of light.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I've,
I think you're right.
yeah,
Oh, I do have one last film that
sure,
I'm
shoot.
deeply interested in, and not just because it's going to star like the prettiest people on the universe. Uh, Don't Worry, Darling.
Oh yes, that's actually September, but the first trailer came out for that.
Yeah, okay, it's September, so not a summer film, but gosh, I am already just like deeply invested
Yeah,
in that
that's
film.
the Florence Pugh and Harry Styles film directed
Mm-hmm.
by Olivia Wilde, who also
Yep.
appears in the movie, and Chris Pine as well. It looks like so.
Yes, Chris Pine is in there, and he's like this evil kind of like cult leader vibe. It's definitely like Stepford Wives kind of horror, and it just looks very. I don't know. It just looks like very something that I'm interested in.
Right. So, although that is a September film, the trailer is out. So, give that a look if you're interested. For me, other than that, I like the A24 films, like Men. Even though like
Mm-hmm.
reviews have started coming out, that kind of middling. I'm still kind of excited to see it. Jessie Buckley is one of my favorite
Right.
actresses right now. And I thought the Marshall with the shell with the shoes on looked pretty cute. That ever
Mm-hmm.
A24 film, and um, I don't know. I think that those are the biggest ones that I want to see. Certainly, there's a new Thor movie that maybe I'll probably check out. And
Oh boy.
there was one that I actually didn't know whether or not I'm going to see because I don't like body horror, and that's the new
Mm-hmm.
David Cronenberg that's coming out.
Do you know the title? I can't recall it off the
I
top of my
think it's
head.
like Crimes of something. Crimes of the Future is what it's called. So this one, yes, is directed by David Cronenberg, and
Mm-hmm.
it's playing at the Cannes Film Festival and competition. It stars Viggo Mortensen, Leah Seydoux, and Kristen Stewart. And yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of body horror. I haven't seen like Cronenberg's big body horror films like Fly, or
Mm-hmm.
I guess Videodrome is one that
Mm-hmm.
might be considered, or Dead Ringers. So like if I watch one of those, maybe I could see where I am. I have seen A History of Violence and Eastern Promises, but this doesn't look like it's going to
Yeah,
be that. So
right. I think this is definitely going to be much more on the campy end of body horror rather than like the oh my god end of body horror.
Right. So yeah, there's some teasers out there to advertise the film since it's playing in the festival in like 2 weeks. We'll talk about John and I will probably talk more about the films at the festival as they make their debut there and talk about what seems to be getting all the buzz from the fest. But other than that, I mean, I'm excited for the summer movies. I know that there's still some people that aren't ready to go back to the movie theater, and like doing a summer movie preview means like, oh yeah, this is stuff that they'll be able to see 45 days later than
Yeah.
when it comes out, because that's
Oh boy.
how all the studios are working now.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Which I mean, like, I am all for, frankly.
right, because it used to be 90 days, and it worked for a long time, but they not only did the pandemic kind of speed along that smaller window, but a lot of movies realize that outside of the biggest blockbusters, it's like after those few weeks, it's like the returns are pretty diminishing anyways. So
Yeah, like the people who really want to see it have already seen it, and the rest of the people are just sort of trickling in. It's just much easier to just send it to streaming while like you still have that buzzy word of mouth going on, rather
well,
than wait 3 months and sort of hope like, oh, maybe people will remember that this is going to streaming.
right, and not only that, but then you like your like advertising machine is still intact, right? So like
Exactly.
people still kind of have it in their frame of mind that it's coming. But it's
Hmm.
interesting you mentioned everything everywhere all at once. I recently saw it for my second time. Um,
Yes.
the reports of the box office are like it's doing magnificently. It's not showing like any loss like weekend over weekend. So
Yeah, I mean it's that's a weird one, right? Like it cost 35 million to make. It's currently made 55 million. So it's doing really well for like a small A24 flick. But I think that reports of its success are slightly exaggerated considering what we're used to seeing with like billions being made at the box office, right?
yeah, sure. I mean, you take it at the level it is, but I wonder, like, its success over these past few weekends is something worth noting. But
Absolutely.
now that we're going into May, I don't know if that's going to be sustained because you have something like Doctor Strange that's going to take up so many screens in a movie theater, and stuff is going to start getting pushed out that has been playing for a long time.
Right. I mean, genuinely, who knows? And I do want to sort of like state for the record that they are doing great. Like the way that they have continued to bring people to the theaters is really remarkable, and it is like steady. But those numbers aren't the kind of numbers that we think about when we think about like a successful like in 2022. They are not the numbers we think about when we think of a successful science fiction fantasy film,
Yeah, sure.
right?
I mean,
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
an A24 level that it's a success, but
Totally.
you need to think of it as what the different distributors are. Like,
I mean, it did compete with the Batman
sure,
for a while. So it is like I think it's one of those films that people are sort of seeing in between other films.
yeah, and I
And
mean, if people want to go see like double multiverse movies this coming weekend, they could totally do that.
multiverse,
Yeah.
the many multiverses.
All right. So that concludes our news section, and I think we're gonna go into our main feature, which is talk about Sam Raimi and his filmography and um his pretty long career. Up until the new Doctor Strange film, he'd been away from making feature films for a little while. I think he directed a pilot for Ash versus the Evil Dead that was I think a show on Stars for 3 seasons, and I guess I had read that he's an executive producer or like on a new Evil Dead project that's like coming to HBO Max or something at the end of the year. I think like
No
it's
idea.
like a
But
small film called like Evil Dead Rise or something like that.
yeah, I have no idea. I know that I'm just looking at his IMDb page and it looks like Spider-Man 3 happened in 2007 and then Drag Me to Hell and then, kind of not really much. A lot of television
Yeah,
stuff.
he did the Oz Great and Powerful movie, I guess.
Ooh. I guess I was gonna like skip over that for the sake of his pride in our time. Um, but yeah, he did do that. You know, we can't erase history. And now he's doing Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is a choice he made.
Yeah, sure. He stepped in for the departed Scott Dickinson, who has another movie coming out this summer called like Black Phone with Ethan Hawke that looks pretty good. But
Oh yeah.
so Sam Raimi steps in and he has a
Hmm.
new project under his belt, another superhero movie after uh, the sour experience of Spider-Man 3. Uh,
Did
and
he not like it? So I really don't know any. I'll be honest. I was a teenager. I was young when those came out. Looking at these dates, I was like 12, 14, 17 when these came out. Um, was Spider-Man 3 that bad? I only have good I maybe it's because I was a child, but I only have good memories of the Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people would say that the third one misses a lot of things. It had too many villains. Uh, I guess
Wait, that was the one with Venom, right?
yes,
What?
yeah,
People.
Sandman and Venom.
God,
Um,
come on, guys. Get with it.
and then they had a lot of people joke about there's like a section where Peter Parker becomes emo, and
That's just so classic Raimi though. It's it's so good. How could you hate that?
no, I tell you, I think I saw like him doing interviews for Doctor Strange, and someone was like, "Oh, I really like Spider-Man 3," and he's like, "Yeah, I bet you there's tens of you that like that movie."
Horrible.
So he doesn't think people have very high regards of it, but regardless, Sam Raimi got his start as making independent films, real small independent films with
Hmm.
uh, his, I guess, where I read his childhood friend, Bruce Campbell, and his brother. And they had made this really low budget film that ended up becoming almost a prototype for what they ended up making with The Evil Dead.
Hmm.
And certainly that's where we'll start talking about their films. But Linda, did you want to talk more about Raimi's maybe style or what he's best known for?
Sure. I mean, I think that he does a lot of things with the camera that are very jarring on purpose. I think that he does it for emphasis and to sort of put you in the headspace of a lot of his characters, which I always find very entertaining. The thing that I really like about Sam Raimi's films and his directing style is that he is a very stylistic, movie forward director, which which I try to explain as being a director who's very aware that he's making a movie and doesn't try to hide the fact that he's like directing a film. If that makes sense
Yeah,
to you.
sure.
Yeah, just kind of like the idea that like he is consistently trying to make you aware that like someone is directing this, you know?
Yeah. No, I get it. I certainly I got that with my exploration into his earlier filmography. I had originally came to his films through his Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and through that trilogy, and then I became interested in Drag Me to Hell, and for a long time that was my history with him.
Hmm.
So it was nice to see the beginnings, if you will. Now,
Hmm.
have you seen the first Evil Dead?
So I haven't seen any of the Evil Deads,
Okay,
which I know is a big Raimi failing on my part, but I like his other films.
that's perfectly fine. As far as I know, which this won't be super helpful to everybody listening, but I did not watch the first Evil Dead either for this podcast. From my understanding, it was, it's a low budget horror film that really caught on with a big audience after it came out. Right, it has
Hmm.
uh, a cult appeal. Uh, People latched onto it like, oh, here's this like X-rated movie You can see just how guerrilla camera making and filmmaking that went into it, because just how little budget they had. And then then after that success, um, I guess it eventually came time to try to make a sequel. And Raimi originally wanted what ended up being Army of Darkness to be the second Evil Dead film. And I guess when he had talked to the money strings, they were like, "Oh well, you should kind of make something in the same vein as Evil Dead, and just continue that because that's what people like." So he, from my understanding, he essentially remade the original Evil Dead, but with little tweaks, and changed the tone. I guess he had like 6 times the budget of the original Evil Dead. Um, and he really made this outrageous film in Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and it it's equal. It's like, I didn't think it was that horrific. Like a lot of people say, it does straddle that line between horror and comedy, and I thought it was a lot funnier than I thought it was horrific. But
Hmm.
maybe at the time, you could see a lot of his techniques in the movie where he was using stop motion to make these like really weird models. And certainly when we talk about Army of Darkness, he uses those techniques again in that movie. And yeah, the jarring camera movements. You said that it's noticeable that like he almost like does hand cam footage where like he's like really like he's the monster himself as the camera, like traveling to get in this case Bruce Campbell in the movie, who's playing Ash, which is one of Sam Raimi's like greatest heroes that him and Bruce Campbell's put together. And there's like a lot of really famous, memorable scenes in this movie. I mean, John and I typically talk, and John's not like a big horror person, but even for myself, who I put this on the back burner for a long time because I thought it would be horrific. I I really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was that
Hmm.
horrific, and you certainly have scenes that are absolutely hilarious, and where he's like his hand is possessed by a demon, and he has to like chop his own hand off in order to like survive. And
Oh my
um,
gosh.
yeah, you would think like it's this like really truly horrific, but like he he plays it up so in a manner that makes it like you're laughing at how ridiculous it is. And since you're like I'm keep on going back to Army of Darkness, you're familiar with that. But
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell, it seems to be like a real master of physical comedy,
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
he takes blows. He's able to punch himself, throw himself. He's just full game into whatever is needed to be done. And a lot of what I witnessed in Evil Dead is like there's not a large script to it. It's a lot of like um Bruce Campbell is really having to sell these scenes, and some of it can be almost considered as silent at some parts. But yeah, I thought it was really cool to see like where um all of Sam Raimi's style came from, and like the beginnings
Hmm.
of him and Bruce Campbell's work. I mean, obviously, Evil Dead, the original is that, but even Evil Dead 2 expands upon that. And then it goes into a wildly different direction for Army of Darkness. And Linda, I was hoping that
Hmm.
you could take over because I think I'm talking too much.
No, no, no. I mean, Army. I haven't seen Army of the Dead, or sorry, Evil Dead. Gosh, mixing up all the.
Yeah, Evil Dead 2, yes.
I haven't seen either of those, so fair. But yeah, so Army of Darkness is about this modern day man who gets basically slingshot into the past for not really any discernible reason other than like magic prophecy happened. And again, it's Ash. It's the same guy. It's
Yes.
Bruce Campbell. He gets slung into the past, and he's in like King Arthur's court, basically. And he's tasked with defeating the gosh,
The Deadites.
the Deadites. God,
Yeah,
the Deadites.
it's
And he
okay.
has
I watched it. I watched it this morning. It's fresh to
oh
me.
my god. The Deadites. And so he has to got so in order to defeat the Deadites, he has to go to this cave and recite these words, but he fucks it up. And then he unleashes the army of darkness. And it's just zombies. It's just zombie skeletons trying to fuck him up. And it's just such bullshit. The whole thing is just so cheesy and campy and funny, and like it's very much a Yankee King Arthur's court, but with chainsaws and shotguns, where he's like, "This is my boomstick," and we're all like, "Oh my god, Ash."
Yeah, that
Think about what you're saying before you say it, please.
yeah, that's exactly what it is, and um, it's funny. He is part of it is definitely this like fish out of water thing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also like weird, like just tangents the movie goes on. I guess like there's whole sequence where he goes to this windmill when he's looking for the book, and all of a sudden like all these like miniatures of him like come to life and they start like attacking him
Yeah,
and
just
like
like they just pop out of nowhere.
yeah, out of
And
this broken mirror. Yeah.
it's just wild. Like there's so much about this. It's just like Sam Raimi going like, how can we make this like even weirder and campier? And he really takes some lessons from like Jim Campbell's like the Dark Crystal kind of thing, or Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, and that kind of like very wacky vibes where he really just does not care. Like he doesn't care about, you know, keeping to a coherent storyline. He really is just very focused on making a movie that is as stylized and weird and fun as possible. And I think that that goes through a lot of his work, where he has like this kind of stylization where his films aren't about real people or real things. They're about these sorts of like weird caricatures that just sort of pop up over and over and over again.
Right, and it seems like a lot of that stuff was also influenced by like stuff like Jason and the Agronauts and like this Ray Harryhausen type of animation style with like the stop motion skeletons really moving, and that's how like a lot of them attack, and certainly a lot of it's super goofy, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
skeletons are just like standing still and there's action happening, and then they dubbed over like sound effects for the skeletons while like a vehicle like runs through them. It's
Yeah, like literally an Oldsmobile just drops from the sky and he just runs over a bunch of skeletons for fun. And I'm
yes,
like, you know what, Sam Raimi, I respect your decision making.
right, and it's funny because it's like you watch this movie and you're like, how did he get this made? Like, how did he convince them to say like, oh yeah, it's cool that you're not gonna do like the Evil Dead thing and like do something totally different and but yet bring the same character, and it's very strange.
Yeah, and I mean, that's Raimi for you, honestly. I think that just he likes to play with the idea that he's making a film. Kind of going back to my one of my first points is just the fact that like he knows he's making a film. He wants everyone else to know it too, and he just sort of wants people to go to the movies and have a good time. I don't think that he is necessarily trying to make capital C cinema. You know, he's there to make a campy, fun, enjoyable movie.
Sure, that's certainly what is going on through that movie. I do believe that I enjoyed Evil Dead 2 a lot more than Army of Darkness. So certainly,
Hmm.
I could see the craft and just the I like the mixture of the genres. When I was doing research for this, Linda, I had I had watched some other videos and people were saying like it's really cool how he can just make uh scenes flip on the fly, like the switch genres almost, like from comedy to horror to drama, and make it all make sense. And certainly there's a lot of those changing moments on the fly and stuff like Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. Um, so you had mentioned here that does Quick and the Dead kind of take place next in our filmography of what we're covering?
Yeah, so Army of Darkness is 92. Quick and the Dead is actually his very next film in 1995. The Quick and the Dead is a Western drama. It is not a horror film. It is not science fiction and fantasy. It is a pretty straightforward like Western drama film. It stars Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, Russell Crowe, and Leonardo DiCaprio. It's fucking stacked.
Right, like if you say that cast now, it's like, oh my god, how did they get all these people to be in this movie? But
Yeah, incredible. Like just straight up like how did this happen? But basically it's a very straightforward revenge fantasy western story where Sharon Stone uh needs to avenge the death of her father who was killed by Gene Hackman.
right, and this was right after Unforgiven, right? If I remember correctly.
I believe so, but I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, because I think Unforgiven was 1992.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then yes, it would have been after that. But yeah, so basically, so The Quick and the Dead, the story is basically that uh, Ellen shows up into this town and has to avenge the death of her father, but nobody knows who she is. Not even the man who like killed her father, obviously. And basically, she has to enter these like gun competitions in order to eventually get close to Gene Hackman, who's I believe his name is like Herod.
Yeah, Herod, it says on IMDb.
Gotcha. Yeah, so she has to get close to Gene Hackman and eventually kill him. But it's just this really incredible film because it has this it's a period piece with a woman with a woman in a lot of agency who is doing like very direct violence, who is like very capable, very in charge of her own life and decisions. And that really doesn't happen a lot even now. It's kind of considered pretty revolutionary for like in a western or in a period piece for like a woman to take up a gun and like actually like shoot someone. But yeah, definitely like Sharon Stone walked so Westworld could run.
No, this looks pretty interesting. Like I think I saw it mentioned while I was looking through his filmography. Um, but it just like if you look at the cast, like even beyond the men that you mentioned and Sharon Stone, it keeps on going. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that looks pretty interesting to check out.
Yeah, and this is another film that where Raimi just does like such funky stuff with his camera. Like during high noon when they're having this shootout, um, he like zooms in on this clock and like shakes the camera around, and I'm just like, what is happening? Why are you making these choices? Uh, like Mr. Raimi, please. So there's still like a lot of his flair in this film, but it is a much more like dramatic, serious take than even his last film, Army of Darkness. And I think that The Quick and the Dead, if we were like looking for films that are like relatively analogous to like how he goes about Spider-Man, I think that Quick and the Dead is a pretty good place to look, frankly.
All right. So while you were talking about it, I found out that as of this recording, you can currently watch it on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd like to catch up with that, as it goes with Netflix, you could be listening to this recording maybe a year from now, and it might not be on there. So,
Or even like a month from now. But
right, right. So I cannot personally guarantee that will be on there, say at the end of May, but currently, it is on Netflix.
yeah, I really recommend it. I think it's really a fun movie. I think it really sort of shows how Raimi is like pushing the boundaries of what he can do with a dramatic text rather than kind of like a funny text. Again, this is not really, it has funny moments, but it's not a comedy. You know, it really is like a change of pace from the work that he had been doing previously.
Right, and following that, he did a lot of like pretty generic dramas, right? It's like
Yeah, oh my gosh, he did that baseball rom-com
yeah,
called
for for the love of the game.
was it Kevin Costner in it?
Yeah,
Oh my god, Kevin Costner getting cast in rom-coms in the 90s is just like one of my favorite things, frankly.
yeah. I
Good
mean,
for
I
him.
not to skip over A Simple Plan. I guess that I wasn't too familiar with that one, but it stars Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton and Bridget Fonda. That one came out in 1998 and is
Dear God.
pretty well reviewed. And then he did For the Love of the Game and
In 99. Yep.
yep. And what was after that one?
IMDb says The Gift.
Okay, I'm not familiar with The Gift.
Neither am I. IMDb says a fortune teller with extrasensory perception is asked to help find a young woman who's mysteriously disappeared. So this looks like a horror drama kind of thing.
Oh yeah, the poster has Kate Blanchett on it, has Katie Holmes and Keanu Reeves. I mean, oh, it's written by Billy Bob Thornton and
Oh
Tom
my
Wilkinson,
god.
so
Wow. Gosh, that's good.
yeah, so that might be interesting too. Who knows? But I guess more importantly, a lot of people will be turning in to listen to this podcast for Evil Dead stuff and for our
Mhm.
next series of films.
What?
Which,
What could they possibly be?
yes, and according to what you wrote on our podcast notes, it's the Spider-Man's trilogy.
Yes, the
The first one,
Spider-Mans.
not the third one or the second one.
No, just the Spider-Mans. Gosh. So I mentioned it earlier. I was a child when the first one came out, 2002. I was 12. Um, and I just thought it was a blast. I loved it so much. And I wish I could go back to little weird Linda and be like, you will never be this happy in a superhero film again.
Yeah,
I wish I wish I could tell them that.
I'm not that much older than you. I was 16 when the original Spider-Man came out.
Hmm.
So yeah, I remember um being a teenager and seeing that in theaters and just thinking that was the coolest film. Because like we had superhero films like you know the four Batman films, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and
Hmm.
Batman and Robin. You had the
A
Christopher Reeve,
Hulk. There
yeah,
was a Hulk in there.
sure. There was the Christopher Reeve Superman movies that were diminishing returns as they went down the line. I still really have a special place for the first Superman film. Um, I don't know how familiar you are with that one, but that is a great like.
Not familiar.
All right,
The
but
answer is not familiar.
let me tell you, there's this really goofy like monologue that Lois Lane has when she like flies as Superman for the first time, and it that alone is worth watching this movie. It's super.
Yikes.
It's like Superman like lighthearted, right? Like you would expect of the character. So and Gene Hackman plays Lex Luthor, and that's a tangent, right? But
I mean, yeah, we can't forget the R-rated king of superhero films at this time, Blade.
right, and that was a pretty awesome superhero film in itself, and of course when Del Toro's Blade 2 came out and continued that.
Blade 2. God, man, I just ran a Del Toro retrospective at the local movie theater, and we chose Blade 2 because they would not let us purchase The Shape of Water because studios are jerks. So
Oh,
we got Blade 2. And it turned out to be like our most anticipated movie. So many people showed out for Blade 2.
oh, that's awesome.
It was incredible. But yeah, just like I think that kind of style of superhero films still impacted Spider-Man.
Sure, and let's lead into Spider-Man a little bit more. This was, of course, Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and then
Mm-hmm.
Kirsten Dunst as the love interest, Mary Jane. In the first movie, you had William Dafoe as the Green Goblin. You also had what's what's not Dave Franco? It's James Franco. James Franco is playing uh, the future young Green Goblin, and Harry Osborn, the best friend of Peter
Yeah.
Parker.
Oh my gosh. I gosh, fond memories just keep flooding back to me right now as we like talking about this. I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, he was the weird Green Goblin, and Willem Dafoe was in it too.
Right,
Gosh, just
and
like nonstop.
yeah, no, that first film is really good, and most people would tell you that the most recent Spider-Man movie that came out just a little while ago, No Way Home, also
Mhm.
brings William Dafoe back into the movie, and he plays like the almost uh, the top build supervillain in that movie, and
As he should, frankly.
yeah,
Uh,
he
you
absolutely kills that role.
you can't top Willem Dafoe for just like weird, over the top, campy, bonkers shit. Like, think about The Lighthouse. Think about how he was in that Wes Anderson film. Think about how he was in mm, Boondock Saints. You know, like there's so many roles out there where Willem Dafoe's like, you think I'm gonna be this very serious actor. Turns out, bitch, you thought. And he just goes off the fucking rails. And we love it.
No, I absolutely love him too. I think for a long time I was weirded out by his style, but then I just grew to love it, and
Mhm.
I love him and everything.
He's a
Later
vibe.
later I'll be talking about the Northman of Robert Eggers directing, and he briefly shows up in that, but he co-starred in Eggers' last film, The Lighthouse, and he's phenomenal in that.
You bet he did. That's like one of the few films that I actually have like fan art for, which is really funny to me.
That's funny because I was talking to John, and he's like, "No, I won't go see the Northman because I really hated the Lighthouse. It did nothing for me." And
What?
I'm like, "Oh, John."
Tell John that we can't be friends.
Okay, I'll tell him next time he's on.
Thank you.
But anyways, yeah, this is the first big screen attempt at Spider-Man,
Hmm.
as like a true motion picture, uh, event. It was actually like licensed, so Spider-Man character and like his enemies were licensed to Sony, which would later haunt Marvel
Oh my gosh,
and Disney.
still haunts Marvel.
Yeah.
Continues to haunt Marvel.
Right, since Sony owns now owns the rights to Spider-Man and all that.
And now we're getting an El Muerto film, which like I'm grateful for Bad Bunny and his success, but why?
Yeah, that's one of the recent Spider-Man spin-off films that was announced.
Gosh. I mean,
Um,
I'm excited, but I'm also just like, I don't understand.
right.
Just,
What were you gonna say?
oh, I was just gonna say, just keep making Venom films, but they are.
Yeah,
And
they
then I'm just
are.
like, good
Yeah.
soup.
So, yeah. So this Spider-Man movie, you know, has Peter Parker, Mary Jane, meeting. It has, Uncle Ben, meeting his demise.
Hmm.
You have it has like a big wrestling event at the beginning, and I think that's where the Bruce Campbell cameo happens, because he shows up in a lot of Raimi's other movies, and
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
and then it continues, and I guess like William Dafoe's Green Goblin has always been like this weird character, because he um or maybe like a lot of the Spider-Man villains kind of feel this way, where they're not really villains, but there's something to them that makes them villainous and pushes them over the edge one way. And certainly that's what happens to the Green Goblin character in this movie.
Hmm. I think that's maybe not typical for Sam Raimi's films, but like it's like a hallmark of some of his films where there's kind of the evil just that just gets like slightly pushed over the edge. It becomes actually like a threat.
Right.
Like something's unleashed or something is like just like nudged just past like being bad to being like, oh shit, a problem.
Yeah, and honestly, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, but um I guess like there like the main story beat at the end of the movie um takes place from the Spider-Man comic 120, which is one of the famous ones in
Mhm.
the early run of Amazing Spider-Man, where I guess the Spider-Man movies have frequently returned to, because I guess they also take beats of that in Amazing Spider-Man 2 that would come out much later, and repeat a lot of the same story beats, but with Gwen Stacy instead of Mary Jane Watson.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
Spider-Man was a monster success, and would
Mhm.
lead to Spider-Man 2, which is, even though it's been so long since I've seen either of them, Spider-Man 2 is probably the one that I remember more. Um, do you
Yeah.
have anything to add about Spider-Man 1 before we go into Spider-Man 2?
I just think that there are so many parts about Spider-Man 1 that are like really iconic that I think that are still like talked about in superhero film discussions today. Like the moment where he realizes that he's been bit by the spider and suddenly he has abs and he doesn't need his glasses. And he just it's just like the funniest scene. It's just so perfect. It really is just a remarkable like moment of like comedy and weirdness. And then of course like the upside down kiss.
Right.
Absolutely like unparalleled. Like I saw that when I was 12 and I was like, I want to be that. And I did and frankly I didn't know whether I wanted to be like Peter Parker or Mary Jane in that moment. Maybe
Right.
probably a little bit of both. But the point is that like that was a moment where I was like, kissing could be okay actually. I don't think I'd mind that. Yeah, and then of course like just the image of the Green Goblin and that suit, right? I think that this was one of the first like not Spider-Man, but first like superhero films where the suit was actually changed from the comics enough to make it look like it could be something useful.
Yeah, right. And I just remembered, like, right around this time, Fox was also doing the first X-Men film, so it was the beginning of
Hmm.
the what comic books would be. Nowadays, you can't escape
Hmm.
comic book movies, but certainly there was much fewer of them back in the early 2000s.
Hmm.
I think on a whole, the one thing that I really love about Raimi's trilogy is just how well cast it was. I think Tobey Maguire is the perfect Peter Parker. Even though I like Andrew Garfield, and I like um what's the new Tom Holland? Yep,
Ooh,
Tom.
I was just like, I'm gonna let you stew in
I
this
got it.
one.
I got it. Yeah, Tom Holland, fine. Like, those guys are good. Maybe it's the kind of like your first Doctor or your first James Bond. Like, that's the one you like the best. But
Sure.
yeah, I like Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker.
Yeah, I'll fully admit that I don't have a favorite. I don't think that these films are worth picking and choosing favorites over, frankly. But Tobey Maguire does a good job. He looks like he's, supposed to be in college and not in high school, but, fine. Willing to suspend disbelief and just pretend that they're going to college. Um, and they do in like the next films, which I'm just like, I really, really do respect Sony for being like, let's have him actually like have a job, please. Like, let's put him in like the shittiest efficiency we could possibly put him into,
Right.
and have him be like a struggling photographer. Anyway, yeah, that's in Spider-Man 2, but for real, the vibes of Spider-Man 1 are really unmatched.
Yeah, I forget, like, which one of the movies had like the dashboard confessional song too, that was like all over the radio. Was it like one or two?
Oh my god, who knows? It was just like
Yeah.
the thing is like these films in particular are like so of their time in like really clear ways that I think that Marvel learned from when they went for Iron Man in
Yep.
2008.
Right.
And they were like,
That was the big shift.
yeah. And when Marvel sort of saw the Spider-Man films, they were like, these will always be from the early 2000s. And I think that they knew even when they were going forward with Iron Man and like the first phase of the MCU, which was just like Iron Man 10 times over.
Yeah.
Uh, that God, that they were really trying to make something that would not necessarily be grounded in the kind of reality that Spider-Man was grounded in.
Yeah, I get what you're saying with that. I remember vividly. There's like a scene where Spider-Man is swinging around the city, and like he passes like a singular like wireless telephone ad, and it's just like, oh, they were later absorbed by AT&T, and it's just like, oh, people watching that now will have no idea what that was.
Right.
Um, but yeah. Anyways, into the second one, and the reason why I really wanted to highlight the second one, and because like Sam Raimi's touches become much more apparent, and it's
Mhm.
definitely, as opposed to the Marvel movies where people say like many of the directors are like maybe directors for hire doing the
Mhm.
Marvel template, and like, yeah, you
Yeah.
you might have like your own specialties and stuff like that, but we expect you to come in, film the movie the way that we want you to, and leave happy.
And that's that. And
And
like collect your paycheck and leave.
right.
Like don't make noise. Have a good time. Bye.
Right, it seems like the guys have maybe been able to like do something a little bit differently, or like James Gunn and Taika Waititi, who have um, maybe used their influence to like make a bigger niche for themselves in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But anyways, these three Spider-Man films from Raimi definitely feel like his movies. They're not built into a template, and there's this great scene where a lot of people reference where it's like Doctor Octopus has Doc Ock rather is getting his life-saving treatment to put on
Mhm.
his like mechanical legs, and it's very like reminiscent of like Evil Dead horror, where all the arms are alive and they're just like
Yeah.
n- killing the doctors who were trying to help him, and it's just like this really graphic horror film scene, and you're just like, wow, where did this come from?
Yeah. I think and I think that's reflected in Spider-Man 3 a little bit too with some of the Venom scenes, but definitely there's in Spider-Man 2 there's also uh the kind of like psychological horror that's going on with Franco.
Yep.
Uh whoever he is in that, the baby goblin.
Yeah, Baby Green Goblin, and he's reeling from the death of his father in the first one, and
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah, okay,
sort of,
he's Harry Osborn.
yes,
His father was Norman.
yep,
Norman died in the first film, and now Harry is like, I will revenge my dad against the Spider-Man.
yes, because
Uh
Spider-Man killed my dad.
Spider-Man kill my papa. Um yeah, so there's a lot of interesting moments in this film where like they are dealing with grief in very, very clear ways, in very interesting ways, where Toby Maguire is still dealing with the fact that like uh Uncle Ben died, and Doc Ock is dealing with the fact that like he accidentally killed his wife, right? Like he killed a lot of people
Sure.
um on accident. And then of course Harry is dealing with the fact that like his dad has abandoned him and now he has all this responsibility and needs to grow up like 10 times faster than he should.
Yeah,
Uh,
accidental death is a big theme in Spider-Man movies.
yeah, obvious, like definitely. Because that's kind of the thing. Like, we don't really want to make our hero actually responsible for killing someone because that makes him like slightly less
Heroic.
heroic. But we can sort of imply that maybe he had something to do with it, possibly. I don't know. I'm just like I'm all for heroes who just please just pull the trigger, please, please. It's why I just love and respect the Winter Soldier so much. It's fine. That's
Sure,
another
or you
podcast.
have you have your heroes like you, the aforementioned John Wick, right? He's certainly still a hero in a lot of people's minds, but he racks up the body count.
Yes, that's true. He does a lot of shooting.
And
But
lots of
yeah,
other things too, in order to get rid of people.
gosh. Yeah, I think that this. I mean, I think that everyone. I don't think I'm alone when I'm saying the standout performance of Spider-Man 2 is Alfred Molina as Doc Ock.
Yeah, so that's also kind of funny too, right? Because it it looks like a lot of these superhero movies, at least in the era of even like Batman, depended on like these big starry villains almost to carry it. I mean, certainly, uh, you can look at Jack Nicklaus, who was the Joker in the first Batman movies. Like,
Hmm.
he says like, oh, you get the biggest actor in the world probably to do it, and then you had a lot of big name actors like carrying these villain roles, and um yeah, I mean, William
Well, they're
Dafoe and
basically.
Alfred Molina aren't
Mhm.
as big names as some of these guys are, but they certainly brought a lot of high drama to their roles.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to sort of see these sorts of villain roles as like guest spots, especially when you're doing like a big franchise like Spider-Man was clearly turning out to being, or like the Marvel universe is. You have to sort of think of a villain role as like a good way to get in and out with that Sony money.
Right. So yeah, I really enjoy Spider-Man 2.
Hmm.
You said you had fond memories of Spider-Man 3. So before we leave the Spider-Man movies, let's talk about that, because I find that kind of interesting, because a lot of people wouldn't quite say that they have fond memories of that movie.
I don't know, man. It was one of those films where it was like I was 17, maybe 18 when I saw it. Um Actually, I was probably 16 when I saw this film. And I don't know, it was just goofy and silly, and like I definitely by this point I wasn't taking Spider-Man seriously, and like I liked that Kirsten Dunst had decided, like, you know what, I'm tired of this Spider-Man shit, and I'm gonna like upgrade to an astronaut boyfriend. And I was just like, hell yeah, Kirsten Dunst, fuck yeah, you are. And then like Venom shows up, and Venom's always like this really goofy character, and again, this ventured a little bit more into the psychological horror that Sam Raimi really likes. And Sandman was weird, but it like had some good special effects for the time. I don't know, I think that like anyone who tries to take a superhero film seriously is probably doing themselves a disservice.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you could look on the internet and find millions of people who are taking these films way too seriously, but um
Oh my god, hundreds,
yeah.
thousands.
But yeah, for me, I think that there was a lot of missed beats of the movie. It wasn't as strong as the first two.
Oh, definitely
Um,
not.
it felt like it was definitely losing steam, or at least Sony had more influence about what they wanted from the movie, as opposed to letting Raimi really do what he wanted. And it also became apparent really when I guess he was set to direct Spider-Man 4. Like he was all set and like signed to do it, and then they decided not to do it afterwards, and
Hmm.
bring Andrew Garfield in and do the whole reboot. Um, but
Yeah, I mean, I still think that like I think that this is still one of those films where like we can really point to a lot of directorial ownership of this of a series and a franchise, and I think that's really remarkable right now, because I don't think any other director for a large superhero series has directed all the films, like even more than two films in a series, you know.
well, I mean, like, to your point, James Gunn is going to do it for Guardians 3, but um,
Is he
uh,
really?
yeah, he's filming that now.
That's tiring.
But I think, like, even as to our point, is that um I don't think, like, he still has to fall into a certain window too.
Oh, he's got to
Um
fall in line. I personally, tangent, feel free to cut this one. Uh, After the first Guardians film, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then he just did it the same thing, and I was like, I'm not as cool with this one. So I'm just sort of expecting like a really exhausting Guardians 3.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense if you weren't on board with two. I imagine they're gonna try to go for more of the same. Um,
Great.
but yeah, I think like that is what was cool about that early 2000s Spider-Man series and
Mhm.
Sam Raimi's trilogy, if you will. And um, yeah, I don't know if we'll see a superhero trilogy quite like that ever again, this where someone was really given the reins to develop a character without um, that much studio interference.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And I think that it would be remiss to sort of point out like he still maintained a lot of his hallmarks of like his weird directorial style, his like interesting camera movements. He was given like a massive budget and he blew every cent of it. But you know,
right.
I think that other than that, he finally got to like do the weird graphics and um like creatures and monsters that he really wanted to do in his other films that he just never had the budget for. No stop motion skeletons in the Spider-Man.
Right. So before we do a quick preview of what we think about Doctor Strange, I want to say, like, after the Spider-Man movie, he kind of retreated into something that he was more comfortable with, and he directed the horror movie Drag Me to Hell.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing that, and I wasn't a big horror person at all when I saw that movie, and it kind of freaked me out. But now I can look at it back at it pretty fondly, and like one thing that we haven't really mentioned, which Rami seems to love, is this like these geysers of guts or blood or whatever uh, fluids that would come from your body. He just like puts them in this like giant sprinkler and like blasts people with it.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly all those projectiles happen and Drag Me to Hell. And it's just a smushy good time.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've actually never seen it, but it sounds like that would be the case.
Yeah, I mean, like thankfully it lives up to its title, and but it if you like his earlier like Evil Dead stuff and like
Mm-hmm.
kind of comedy horror, like it's certainly right in that ballpark, and let him stretch his wings back into something that he wanted to do. As we said, after that he kind of had a lull, and now he came in as like a director for hire in this Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the hopes is I did not go to the press screening. The hopes is that he can have his weird little moments in an otherwise film that's probably bursting at the seams with um, direction for him to go in.
Yeah, and I think this is really like the only way that Sam Raimi could have had like any ounce of control, or like not control, but like directorial vision in Marvel is if he was given a film like this, where it's like you can have as many visions as possible, right?
Yeah,
And I don't think that he would have worked with any. I don't think he would have worked with like you know the contemporary Marvel Spider-Man. I don't think he would have worked with um, Guardians of the Galaxy even or Thor or anything else because it's just like it's just not weird enough, right? Like the visuals aren't there. Um, so I think that Doctor Strange is exactly where he should be.
right. And I mean, like I do have my reservations about like how much he'll be involved. I'm planning on going into this a little bit more on the newsletter, but like from my understanding, there's a lot of homework you have to do if you want to be fully up to date with what goes on in this movie. Like you have to watch
God.
the original Doctor Strange and like some of the different TV shows that are on Disney Plus, and having to have watched the new Spider-Man film. And I'm just like, this is going to be exhausting for a lot of people. And like in like 15 years from now, when people try to
Uh,
watch this movie, they're gonna like have to look it up. Yeah,
incomprehensible.
they're gonna have to look it up online and like file like a sheet of like what do I need to watch in order to watch this movie.
And
I'm like, that's kind of ridiculous.
it's ridiculous. It's tiring, it's exhausting. It's one of those things where it's just like at what point are we going to sort of admit that this is too much? And it just doesn't feel like we're even close to doing that, which is really frustrating for me. I'm just like, not this isn't like good filmmaking.
Yeah, and I mean, you cover a lot of nerd stuff. I mean, this is certainly something that happens in the comic book world,
Hmm.
and like they have these big events where like you have like the main comic that you're reading, and then they have like all the other characters have spin-off
Yep.
comics that tie into it.
Yeah.
And maybe that works for comic books to an
It
extent. I mean,
I mean, that's kind of the thing. Like, it's gotten to the point where it doesn't work, where people aren't reading the comic books that they used to be reading, and now they have to do big event after big event after big event in order to like combine all of these individual plot lines into something coherent for a month. And then they split up again, and you have to follow like a million different people and a million different issues. So it is getting to that point where everything is like so fractured, and these sort of storytelling monoliths are figuring out that they can't just keep doing what they've been doing for the past like 10 or 20 years, and they're going to have to start like refiguring out how they are going to tell stories. But they are so entrenched in the way that they currently do so that I doubt they will ever actually get there.
right? Why sell one comic when you can sell 20?
Right. I mean, they're just sort of it really is like they're just sort of careening slowly towards like the heat death of the MCU.
Well, according to what went down at CinemaCon, they had Kevin Feige had said that they did a retreat discussing the next decade of Marvel Cinematic Universe
Oh my
material.
god.
So,
That man needs to be stopped. Like, I understand that you just want to make money, but like there's got to be a point where I mean like that's kind of the thing, right? Like no one is ever going to stop him. No one's going to
no,
stop
no,
Kevin Feige.
no. I mean the Disney money train, right? I mean until like there shows some fatigue for these kind of movies, they're gonna just keep on rolling.
Yeah, which is just like such a bummer. It really is one of those things where it's like I saw a graph the other day where it was just like the amount of movies that get made are continually like being more and more sequels or prequels or like reboots, and it's not just like us thinking it has been like a marked exponential increase, and like the highest grossing films are continually like becoming even more and more high grossing, and I'm just like the art form is reaching a point.
Right.
Which is like a distraction from Multiverse of Madness, of course, but like the
No, that's okay. I
MCU,
mean, we're
yeah.
talking what we know about the film, and obviously, from my understanding, the trailers haven't been too forthcoming with what the plot of the actual movie is either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of frustrating. Like the big can I reveal spoilers? Am I allowed?
um, yeah, if you know, like, as long as you haven't seen the movie, if you're just doing like conjecture of what you've been reading, that's probably cool.
Yeah, so kind of like the big villain. Like so as you would know if you watched all of these trailers, um they've been really dancing around the fact that Scarlet Witch is the villain of this film. She is trying to find a universe where she can be with her children.
Yeah.
That's the plot. So it's just one of those things where oh, why?
Right, and
Why?
in order to know that, you would have had to see WandaVision, right?
You would have
So,
had to see WandaVision, you would have had to see like uh Doctor Strange 1. And then of course like we just jumped through all of these universes where in between America Chavez and Scarlet Witch, we are inevitably going to get these like weird kick-ass scenes where things are just kicking ass for no reason other than there is ass and it must be kicked because it's a Marvel film.
right.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that like there might be if there's like a Loki cutscene in there, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's just one of those things where I'm like, I'm tired. I'm so
Right. I
tired.
mean, a lot of the things that people are looking forward to in these movies now almost comes down to like which character will cameo in it, and if they don't show up, that's the disappointing part. And it's just like,
Tiring.
really, that's what you're looking forward to, not the actual like film itself, but just like who's going to cameo and show you, like what's the promise of what's to come, right? Not necessarily what you're
Yeah.
watching, but like, oh, I'm looking forward to the next thing.
Right. I mean, it's all a vehicle, which is just really frustrating and silly. And yeah, I've definitely, if you can't tell, I've definitely like gotten to the point with Marvel and Star Wars and the big franchises where I am a little over it.
Fatigued.
Yeah, fatigued is a great word for it. Just kind of tired about having to like think about these things, tired of having to write about them, tired of having to like defend myself when I'm saying like these movies aren't good. Like they aren't good. They stopped being good like 6 years ago.
Yeah, that's kind of disappointing. I mean, I haven't seen the new Doctor Strange yet, and I hope that Rami is able to do something with it, and it's entertaining. But we'll see what actually happens. That comes out uh later this week, or probably by when this podcast is up, and everybody can go check it out and see if it's their new favorite Marvel movie ever, and let us know.
Good luck.
Anyways, let's do how to find us, and before we get to what we've been watching, and you can find me at MH Colville on Twitter. John is no longer on Twitter, so you can't find him there. But if you'd like to reach out to him or me, you can find us at the podcast email. It's the pictures at gmail.com. You can let us know what you've been watching, your favorite Sam Raimi film, whether or not you're going to stop listening to us because we always hate on Marvel. We'd love to hear all of that from you guys. If
Uh,
you can listen, you can find the podcast on Twitter at It's the Pick Pod. Um, Linda, where can they find you on Twitter?
once again, I'm mostly on Twitter at Lynn Codega, Lincodega. And you can find most of my writing on IO9.
All right, wonderful. Elsewhere, the podcast is on Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on Stitcher, it's everywhere, even YouTube nowadays. If you want to listen, please listen, download, share it, let people know you love it. Where you can rate it 5 stars, we'll let more people listen to the show, find it, locate it, and love it. Then we also have a letterboxed. Um, there, I post a lot of the stories that come from our newsletter. I also make lists of the movies that we talk about in our podcast episodes. So if you're interested to see what names we dropped, or maybe you missed something, you can check on Letterbox and see the movies that we had listed there. Um, Also liking reviews and sharing of our list as well. And then, like I mentioned, we have our newsletter. It's thepitchers.substack.com. I write there, trying to write there weekly and maybe more regularly in May. April was a little dicey. I did a review for Pace Magazine. I was a little busy, but May seems a little lighter. I did a full summer movie preview there, which you can look at, and I plan to have a review of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds on there shortly. I've watched some of that and look forward to discussing that more with everyone. Whew. Okay, so now we can get into what we've been watching. As I told Linda ahead of time, this is the section where we talk about just anything that we love, and let people know um, what what we think about. I mean, maybe not necessarily stuff we love, but at least something that we want to talk about. Um, Linda, you brought two things to the table today, and
hmm
can you tell our audience a little bit about them?
Yeah, so I watched The Massive Weight of Unbearable Talent on Sunday. And it was great. It was just me and my friends in this tiny little theater, and we were just laughing our butts off the whole time. It was so funny and charming. Pedro Pascal's momentous. Uh,
Oh, Linda, this is great because our last episode, John and I did in celebration of this movie. We looked
mm,
back at some Nicolas Cage movies that we hadn't seen before in
yes.
anticipation of seeing this.
hmm
So you
Yeah,
enjoyed it?
I did. I enjoyed it very, very much. It's very self aware. It's very tongue in cheek. Nick Cage, it sort of proves that Nick Cage has always known what he's doing, even when people think that he's being too operatic or too emotional or too whatever. I think that this film in particular is very clear about how intentional he is and how absurd he is and how much he knows about himself.
Do you think people who are well versed in his filmography will get necessarily much more out of this, or just get little nods and
I would
more
say,
about the story?
yeah, I would say little nods. I would say that there's certainly a lot of them, but they do a really clear job of including people who haven't watched his filmography in the absurdity. So even if you just go into it not knowing that he's done Face Off or he was in Moonstruck or whatever, you get a pretty, so you still get like a pretty clear view of what is meant by the jokes about Face Off, right? I think that it does a really good job of balancing those things.
Oh, great. Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. John texted me the other day. Like I said, he couldn't be on, but he ended up going to the theater for the first time, and I don't know, since I guess before the pandemic, and he went and saw the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and he said that he really enjoyed that. So I look forward to talking to him more about that one.
Nice. And the other thing that I put down here is Our Flag Means Death, which is a gay pirate workplace comedy on HBO Max that is 10 episodes long, and it has rotted my brain from the inside out.
So that's the one that's directed, or at least is it executive produced by Taika Waititi, and or
Yeah,
how
exactly.
involved is he?
He's one of the producers. He, I think, gets like some, like, he might get a writing credit here and there. And I think that he might have directed one of the episodes, but David Jenkins is the showrunner. And it stars Taika Waititi, Rhys Darby, and I'm going to say Con O'Neill. I think that he deserves it. He's a star. But definitely Taika Waititi and Rhys Darby are the leading men. It's just wonderful. There's Vigo Ortiz is in it. Samson Kayo's in it. A lot of people that you would just recognize from around BBC, basically.
Is it a straight comedy, or is it there's more to it than that?
It's definitely, so it's like a historical romance, but it's a
Okay.
funny historical romance. But it's so it's 10 episodes long, and the first 2 or 3 episodes are like, you think that this is going to be straight, don't you? And then it's straight baiting is what it is. And it feels good, man. It feels good to be on the other end of that joke. But yeah, it very quickly turns into a romantic comedy just set in the 1700s with pirates who are gay
Well,
for each other.
well, Linda, you're not the first person I've heard that is over the moon for this show. There's a big fan effort to get a second season greenlit.
A big fan effort that I am a part of. Putting that out there.
I guess the biggest problem comes from the recent merger, right, with Warner Brothers and Discovery, and they're trying to determine what shows they're going to bring back and what shows that they might cut. And
yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's also one of those things where usually these sorts of renewals aren't announced until the end of a quarter anyway, so we'll probably have to wait until June to see what's what.
I don't know, not to sink your pirate ship, but it was just announced today that Julia already got a renewal for season 2. And
I mean, okay, fine. Oh, that's fucking stupid. But do they hate money? I don't understand. Ugh. I mean, Our Flag Means Death has been the #1 most watched, most in-demand show on streaming services for 6 weeks. It has held off Moon Knight for 6 fucking weeks. It bumped Book of Boba Fett off the fucking rankings when it came up. I'm just saying, HBO Max, do you hate money? What's the problem?
Well, it does sound wonderful. Do you think it's a one of a kind type of show?
What do you mean by that?
It exists in a space that maybe we haven't seen many things like it, and it's being championed for that reason, or it's just a damn good quality show, and that's why we should renew it.
Yes to both. The first is that it is just a really funny, classic New Zealand tongue-in-cheek workplace comedy, and it's great. and it's very well done. And some of the needle drops are just fantastic. Like there's a point at in episode 8 where the diegetic music is to Fleetwood Mac's The Chain, and it has like literally like someone beating the drums of the intro, and then like some guy with a lute just walking by strumming it, and I'm just like, it's just brilliant. So it's really funny, really well done, and it's also pretty groundbreaking in the way that it portrays not only a queer normative world where like there are multiple queer couples, but also like a trans normative world where the trans character just says, you know, like I go by Jim now, and everyone just uses Jim, you know, and even when like the kind of the singular not homophobic, but definitely like not totally on board with what's happening character, who's Con O'Neill, by the way. He plays Izzy Hands, and he's just stunning. I love a short king who's angry all the time.
Short King Spring, right?
Short King Spring. It's exactly what it fucking is. God, I love Con O'Neill. Anyway, the point is that like even when the one holdout of like heteronormativity is on screen, he still uses like the correct pronouns for Jim, which are they them, and it's incredible. So it's just one of those things where uh in addition to being like the kind of representation that queer people have been searching for a really really long time, it's a very funny character driven show that is incredibly well written and very clever, and gets better every time I watch it, which is at this point 3 times.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you were able to talk about it here, because it certainly um, grew my interest in it. I thought I was interested in it just because of how passionate people are in general about it. But I will definitely have to check it out for myself and see some pirates in action.
Please do.
So I watched a much more serious movie, um, and that is the new Robert Eggers film, the Northman, and this stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, William Dafoe, Ethan Hawke, and Claes Bang, which um, I know him best from his starring role in Ruben Östlund's The Square, and I think he's fantastic as the villain here in The Northman, and the trailers kind of undersell the movie, right? So it's this idea that Alexander Skarsgård starts the movie as a boy, and his father gets killed by his uncle, and he escapes with his life, and he vows vengeance, and that he's going to save his mother and kill his uncle. And quickly we see Alexander Skarsgård as a adult male, and he is, you know, a Viking that goes around like just maiming people
Mm.
for his livelihood. And it comes a time where he's visited by a witch, um, played by a brief cameo by Bjork, who reminds him of his sacred mission to um, avenge his father. So he drops everything and finds where his uncle's living, and while he's doing that, he meets a slave girl who's kind of like a witch too, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who was also a veteran of Edgar's films, having appeared in his first feature, The Witch. And yeah, it's a pretty straightforward film, right? Like I said, like the tagline, like he's there to avenge his father, save his mother, and kill his uncle. That's what you're gonna get with this movie. But
What more do you expect from a Viking-based Robert Eggers film?
right,
Frankly, like I don't know what more you're asking for.
right. But what he continues to do in his movies is like, he's built a reputation for himself that he's really big on authenticity. Um, the Witch famously used only materials that would have been present during its time, and The Lighthouse was very similar. So when they were doing the production for The Northman, they brought in experts on this on the type of materials that they would have used, and just the design of certain ships or buildings, and um, a lot of that really helps elevate this from just like something that you've seen countless times before to something a lot more authentic. And yeah, I mean, for a lot of it, it's still a Robert Eggers film, right?
Mhm.
It's dense, and there's less action than maybe you would think there should be. I guess the first time we're introduced to Skarsgård as an adult, there's this great tracking shot of a battle scene that he's in, and that's probably like the best battle sequence in the entire movie. Um, but it's pretty cool. Any movie that has its final battle in the middle of a volcano between two like almost naked men with swords, you gotta like admire a little bit, right? Like he went there. Um,
Flashbacks to Mustafar.
so yeah, I enjoyed it. I think like those like people looking for like this really heroic and feel good story, like something like Conan the Barbarian might um feel a little misguided by this one, because it's not that kind of feel good part to it, but there's still like some great like sword and sorcery stuff going on, and
Mhm.
I really like the authenticity to it.
Cool.
All right, so that's our episode. I would like to thank you, Linda, for joining me today and talk about Sam Raimi's filmography, and
Yeah, thanks
a
for
little
the invite.
yeah, a little bit about some other things you love, like Our Flag Means Death.
Ugh,
And yeah, I think this was great. Hopefully you'd come on again, maybe when John's around or something.
for sure. Would be super glad to, for sure.
All right, wonderful. All right, so I will be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully, I'll bring John back with me. We'll find some great things to talk about for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this one. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.